Hello and welcome to another Europa Universalis 5 video, the game that we're all incredibly hyped about. And if you would like to continue being on this hype train with me, then maybe hit the subscribe button. Helps me out and you stay informed. Now, what are we going to do today? Well, we're going to make a tier list because everyone likes tier lists. This is an objective fact. Tier lists are cool. I will be taking no notes upon this. However, making a tier list for EU5 is a little bit difficult because, well, what are we going to do? Rate all of the mechanics? Yes. Yes, we are. But personally, I'm very lazy. So I decided to just take the one that A1 Joshua Fitzgerald has made with his own grading system and color coding how much knowledge we have of the game, and we're going to use his tier system. We're going to use his Google Sheet that he has made, and we're going to rate all of the mechanics in the game, ranked by how much knowledge we have of them. And I think that's kind of cool. So, the grades that we have, going from S+ with a perfect mechanic, could not identify a world where it is better, all the way down to F, terrible mechanic, fundamentally reduces enjoyment of the game. And while I don't believe there are going to be any literal F tier mechanics in EU5, none that I can think of at least, that's why I've got everything currently sorted to F, because I needed a little bit of a holding place before I moved everything around. And then eventually they'll be on this tier list that will maybe look a little better at some point. But right now it looks kind of ass. But it's going to look great. It's going to look great. We're going to talk about the various mechanics in EU5, my own opinions on them, and my own thoughts after having played the game for 85 hours. So, let us start off with a little bit of map granularity, the locations and provinces and areas versus EU4's provinces and areas. The game calls it both areas and states, so I don't think that's too much of an issue there. So, what do I think of the map granularity? I think I very much enjoy granularity in my maps. It is especially useful for when you have armies that are on the map and unit models, as every single good Paradox Grand Strategy game does have. And it really helps with that. I think as well the fact that everything is most things are based on the location level, which is the smallest area of land in the game. Buildings, your population, like everything is on that level, which makes everything just feel way more granular than it could be. Like it could be that you lift things up a level and have things based on the province level, and then locations are just there for your armies. But they didn't do that. They put all of the buildings, they put the populations, everything on the smallest level possible, while hopefully keeping the game running at a good pace. I am happy with it. I think I'm not going to put it in S+, because I think as time goes on, we are going to get updates to the map. Areas that are less granular will become more granular. The map will improve over the hopefully 10 years of support that it's going to get. So I'm going to pop this in S tier because I do think it is... No, A+. There is a possibility for improvements that can be identified, and I guess more granularity in areas that have less granularity is that improvement that I can identify. So that's fine. Now, location, geographic modifiers, so climate, topography, and vegetation. I think when you compare this to EU4, it is a marked improvement on all levels. I don't agree that we only have a mediocre knowledge, though. I think we actually do have perfect knowledge. We know exactly what each of these do. We know exactly what the climate does. We know exactly what the topography does. We know exactly what the vegetation does. So to say it's a mediocre knowledge, I don't know. I don't know what the unknowns really could be here. However, from my own personal opinion, while a lot of the time I played in areas that had very decent climate, so I played a lot of Italy, I played a little bit of Germany, and I played a bit of England. So climate didn't really affect my games too much. Something like topography and especially vegetation really does make a big difference. more so than in EU4, right? In EU4, you have a terrain type, so woods, plains, farmland, etc. And this would affect your development cost, and in certain cases, it would affect the amount of buildings you can build, right? A plains province was allowed to have +1 buildings, right? I think mountains had -1 buildings. Thankfully, that system of like limiting the amount of buildings you can have is gone. I hated that. But in EU5, obviously, the main thing that affects how many people can live in that location is your vegetation. And then there are modifiers based on climate and topography as well. And I think the system works phenomenally well. I honestly can't see anything wrong with it. I think there are people who will argue that, you know, this climate in this area is wrong, or maybe this should be more wooded or less wooded or whatever. I can't see anything wrong with it, but I can see there being one or two things that I would like to see done differently. And that is essentially the ability to deforest a location, to turn a plains into a farmland, something along those lines. I think that's something that we had kind of teased really early on as something that they would like to do if the technology permits. And unfortunately, it looks like the technology won't permit, so we're not going to get that. And I think for that reason, I'm going to pop that in A tier, because it does everything that I want. It does everything way better than EU4, but there is that one thing that would just tip it into the S+, and it's just not there. Now, flavor, the amount of flavor in the game. Not sure why this is in the geography and map mechanics section, but whatever, we'll go with it. The amount of flavor it's there in different ways, which I suppose is implementation. So to split these up is a little bit awkward, right? The amount of flavor is both more and less than EU4, because if you think of the example of England, has around about 50 historical event chains in the game in EU4, whereas in EU5 it's like 268. So the amount of flavor for certain countries has gone way, way up. The amount of flavor for other countries, things that are not in tier 1 or 2, may be a little bit less. However, like I said, I played a lot of Italy, right? I played a lot of Milan, of Florence, and of Naples. And to my recollection, none of those were tier 1 or tier 2 nations. I mean, certainly none of them were tier 1. I'm pretty sure none of them were tier 2 either. Where I can see if we have the flavor tiers. Here we go. Yeah, none of I didn't play any tier 2 other than Byzantium, and I didn't play any tier 1 other than England. So I played a little bit of Brandenburg, but not a whole lot, and I also didn't play too much of England either. So most of the things that I played were tier 3 nations. And especially with Florence, which I think had, if I remember correctly, 36 dynamic historical events, I did not feel like I was getting barren flavor. I felt there was enough there that I wasn't being bombarded with dynamic historical events, but they were coming at a very decent pace. I think in the 100 years that I played, I suppose the Florence probably played a little bit less than that. Maybe like 60 years I played. I think I definitely had enough content there to make me satisfied. And that is a tier 3 nation that isn't in the, the upper echelons of, important ones that we all love playing. It was tier 3. And I still felt like there was enough there for me to be content. Now, of course, there is less than EU4 because you're counting mission trees in that, and there is a lot of flavor that is put into mission trees. But just based on the amount in historical events, I think we're looking at a solid A here, because there's always going to be more that they can do. There's always going to be more content that can be added, more historical events, more of everything. But as far as what I experienced goes, there was enough. As for the implementation, though, I said already that we've lost mission trees, though I do believe that in time they will be coming back. I think the DLC policy for this game, what I assume or what I expect to see, is DLCs based on either cultures or regions, or in some cases individual countries, where they're adding mission trees for those countries, like flavorful mission trees. Also other things like unit models and artwork and clothing for your characters, and probably music and a bunch of other stuff as well. But I think in terms of flavor, events and such, and mission trees, I think that is going to come in DLCs. But there's another thing in here that I'm less in favor of, and that is the loss of national ideas. I really like national ideas in EU4, and I think it is a shame that nothing has really come to replace it. And you could say, oh, but Lambert, the national ideas, they're now just part of the advances system, and you can get every one of your national ideas there by treating it just as every other technological advancement. And to take your unique advances, you have to forego something else in the advances tree. So if you have a country that doesn't have great national ideas or great unique advances, you're going to lose out on that flavor because you're instead going with what is more powerful, more strong, more beneficial in the advances tree. And I don't know. I don't like that. I think that's a bit of a shame. I think the advances probably should... I think if you are going to add these national ideas to the advances area, they may have to be like cheaper advances, right? Instead of taking 30 invention points. I actually can't remember what the system they use for it is. Instead of taking 30 of these innovation points, then instead takes 15 to take one of your unique ones. Though maybe that would make unique advances too powerful, and maybe that would also be a negative thing. I don't know where I would go with this. I just know that it felt really good to pick up national ideas in EU4, and I don't get that same buzz when I'm researching a unique advance in EU5. So on that one, I think I'm gonna put C+. And I mean, C+ should be fine. It's mediocre. It's right in the middle, but it's better than mediocre. C is mediocre, but yeah, I don't know. It feels like there could be better. But anyway, maps and the graphics of the maps. I think when you look at the maps, you really have to maybe set yourself an extra tier list, and that is which Paradox game has the best map. And I think even though EU5's map is looking better and better, I don't think you can say it looks better than Imperator Rome's. Save for one area, and that is mountains. In Imperator Rome, the mountains were a little bit too blocky and flat, and it didn't look amazing. But everything else, the water, the farmland, the rivers, I think Imperator Rome did it better. I don't think it was bad by any means in EU5. I still think EU5 takes a very deserved second place spot, and that's still really high. I think the maps do look really, really good. But I do think Imperator did slightly get it better. So I think I'm gonna pop it in A+. I don't think it deserves the S, because there's certain areas, especially if we have a look at one of the more recent posts that Johan has made. Here, let's check page 1. We got a picture of, which is actually not the one I was looking for, but we have a picture of a map here, and if I go to the actual post that I was looking for, which is 500 years of progress, and go to page 1 here, we have lovely maps, but I think specifically the area that I think could be improved is the borders between vegetation styles. So we have, you know, farmlands here, and then I think this is like plains, and the border between them is just a little too harsh. If this was made a little bit more granular, and you can see it especially here, this is a very harsh line. If that was maybe made a little bit more granular, a little bit more blended, then I think it would deserve to be in an S tier. I still think Imperator will take the cake, so S would be where it could get if that is fixed. And I think over time, map's gonna just get looking better. It already is looking better than the first time I saw it. So yeah, I can definitely see it being bumped up on release. Moving on, though, to the population mechanic, and Pops itself. Pops as a mechanic in and of itself is straight up an S+ tier. I don't think I need to explain. Pops link into every single part of the game. There isn't a mechanic in the game that the Pops aren't really relevant for. You can say, how much money to make? Well, it's based on the taxes of the Pops, or the trade based on, you know, what the Pops need, the buildings who the Pops are, you know, working in, the armies that are based on your populations, you know, levies raised from Pops, soldiers raised from manpower, which is raised from Pops. Pops are everywhere, and it is undeniably the lifeblood of your country, and I think as a mechanic, the Pops just work perfectly. I don't think there is anything that I can think of to improve it. Initially, there were a bunch of different Pop types. We have the burghers, the clergy, the nobles, the peasants, which I think didn't used to be called peasants, but then got changed to peasants either way. And then that then had laborers added, or slaves as well. And then it had laborers added, and I think they've also added tribesmen as well. Maybe an improvement could be adding more Pop types, but I personally can't think of what else I would add. But it seems like an incredible mechanic, and I think modders are going to make a lot of use out of it, because things that the game is not utilizing has been made available for modders to utilize, like putting different modifiers on Pop types itself. So you can have your Elven Pops, you can have them be different from your Dwarven Pops, and you can, you know, limit promotion from one to the other to 0, obviously, because that's just not going to happen. But I think as far as Pops go, S+, it is what makes the game so hype for me. I love it. But culture. What do we think about culture? I think there are certain aesthetic things that I would change. For example, Northumbrian I would rename to Northern English. I think there are people who are making some complaints about some of the like Ruthenian cultures. But that's aesthetics. That's not really something mechanical. I would change Greek into Romoioi, for example. But again, that is pure aesthetics. It doesn't actually make too much mechanical difference to the game. As a mechanic, I think culture works relatively well, especially in the element of accepting and tolerating cultures, right? So in EU4, if you have a culture with 20 dev and a culture with 1,000 dev, accepting those cultures is equally as expensive, right? Each of them takes one accepted culture slot, even though one is 500 times larger than the other, or 50 times larger than the other. In EU5, however, that tiny culture will take up a tiny amount of culture capacity, whereas the larger culture will take up a lot more cultural capacity. And I think that makes it so that you can pretty confidently and comfortably just accept more of the smaller cultures without too much issue. And I think that is a massive improvement over EU4. I really, really heavily disliked the culture system in EU4, so I'm going to pop this in S tier, because I honestly think that it is perfect as it is, right? And yeah, there are certain areas where there are certain issues that cropped up. Like, for example, in my Florence video that I made, there is a culture that only took up 5% of my total population, that cost quite a heavy amount of cultural capacity to accept. There is also the issue of turning a culture into accepted so that you can get cores on an area and then immediately unaccepting them, and then you keep the cores. That's an issue. I think that's more so a bug or an oversight that will be fixed by release, so I don't think that really deserves to be mentioned alongside the tier list. But moving on, we have religion, and this one's a little bit more contentious and certainly a lot more controversial. The recent dev diary on Islam threw up a lot of complaints about how piety works and how it is both too gamey and also too similar to EU4. There are a certain subsect of the community that is saying that everything that is gamey should be removed and everything should be... I want to kind of say mechanicless in a way. That's not what they want, but they want things to not be click button, get reward. And I totally agree with that. I think that's a fine perspective to have. I'm personally, especially on the Islam front, I'm kind of fine with it. It is like EU4, but slightly improved. Even the people who are disliking the system say it's like EU4, but slightly improved. The one that I have more issue with is with Catholicism, because personally, I really liked Catholicism in EU4. Having a separate UI window that popped up in the middle of your screen, you click it and you hear some, flavorful little chime, and then you can build up your papal points based on how much the Pope likes you, and then you can spend those papal points on various bonuses. I liked that. I thought that was flavorful, it was fun to engage with, and I consider Catholicism to be one of the most fun religions to play in EU4. EU5, however, it is just not there. You can vote on various papal bulls, you can go on a crusade that the Pope calls. It wasn't there for me. It didn't feel as good as EU4. So for that, I'm gonna pop it down in C. Sorry. Social class, though, and I think this is basically pop type. Are you a laborer? Are you a burgher? Are you a clergy? Are you a noble? And I think this works really well. Having clergy work in the clergy buildings and the nobles work in the noble buildings, and then it kind of links into estates because, obviously the nobles are going to build buildings for the nobles as well if they have the money for it. It does blur the line between, social class and estates, but not every pop has its own individual estate. There is no slaves estate, for example. There is no laborers estate. They will be part of other estates, commoners mostly. But for social classes as well, I think I would probably rename this to pop types. Unless I'm completely misunderstanding what it is he's referencing here, but I think it works. I like that when you are raising levies, you have your noble levies coming from your noble pops, and those noble pops are better armored. They usually have cavalry, etc. I love that. I love the fact that, if you are building if you're constructing a building that requires laborers and you don't have enough laborers, your peasants will, over time, promote to being laborers, and that really promotes trying to stack the modifier of promotion speed quite nicely. I'm totally in favor of this, and I guess we'll talk about it a little bit when we get to diseases and plagues, but also I think the fact that burghers tend to reside more in cities, and the cities are more affected by the plague, and so you lose more burghers than you lose of the other pops. S tier. I love that. Even though I'm putting in an A tier. Anyway, culture conversion. I am happy that it is not as prevalent as it is in EU4. I also am happy that it is not as necessary as it is in EU4. Culture conversion is a lot slower, right? You can spend one of your cabinet actions to try and convert an area, convert a province area later, if you do some text and stuff, to being more your culture. You can also use your cabinet to migrate pops over to a province to make it more your culture, and you can expel pops to try and, encourage your own pops to be the majority there. I think it works way more realistically than EU4, and for that alone, I think it is a perfectly serviceable, good mechanic. And I don't have a problem with it. Some people, especially the World Conquest crowd, might think it is a little too slow, but whatever. It is a significant improvement over E4. Could be better. Yeah, probably. Do I know how? Don't know. I don't know. Diseases and plagues. This one, when I played the game, I think, actually, I lost access to the game 2 months ago today, as I record this. The Black Death especially was not as impactful as I would have hoped, as I would have expected. But I've come to believe that the reason for that is because trade made up such a huge, huge amount of our income that losing the pops didn't impact it as much, because pops are less into the trade aspect than they are into taxes. So my tax income went down significantly with the Black Death, but my trade income was relatively unaffected. Trade has been nerfed quite significantly since I last played, so I think the Black Death, especially losing a third of your population, is going to be significantly harder to deal with. And as well, it's not only the Black Death, right? In my Florence campaign, I think I lost 50,000 people earlier than the Black Death appeared to, I believe it was smallpox. And while these numbers are, especially when you think, pops as a mechanic or S tier, pops are related to everything. They're related to everything, but not in the same amount. They're related to taxes way more than they're related to trade, and taxes being a bigger part of your income now, these diseases and plagues are going to be way, way more impactful. So I think if I was rating this based on the version of the game that I played, I would have probably put it in B. As it goes now, as I understand it, with the changes that have been made since I played, I think I'm gonna pop it in A+. I think I'm gonna pop it there. Religious conversion. There are per knowledge and significant unknowns. Religious conversion, I feel like I don't really know too much about it either, because I didn't get to the period of the game where Protestantism spawned. While I played a little bit of Bohemia, I didn't get to 1400, so I didn't experience the Hussite Wars, unfortunately. So I don't know as much as I really would like to about religious conversion, but I think in the same vein as cultural conversion, it's going to be a lot slower than some people want, and but I think it's going to be faster. I think it's going to be a lot faster than cultural conversion, but still slower. As far as I understand it, I'm going to pop it B+. I am not unhappy with it. All right, another controversial one that a lot of people are, no matter what I put here, people are going to disagree. Some people believe that I should leave this number alone, or letter alone. They believe it should be an F tier, and it should stay there, and we should ignore it forever and ever and amen. I disagree. I was of the opinion that characters, the looks of them were I was quite negative towards it, but the implementation of them purely on mechanics, I was always in favor of. If you go back to my video that I made, I think like 2 or 3 years ago, before Tinto Talks even started, talking about what I want to see for EU5, I said characters should be in it, right? I expected characters to be in it because of, it's kind of just the way that Paradox are going with their company. You know, they made a character system, they're going to include it in every game because it works. But if we're talking just about EU5 and how they're implemented here, especially with dynasties, I think it works really well for dynasties. The personal union system is much more understandable than it is in EU4 by a factor of a gajillion. Their skills, especially for your monarch, are less impactful than monarch skills in EU4, which is a good thing. Essentially, the higher your skill in with your monarch in EU5 depends on how impactful your cabinet is. So if you have a high admin skill, the efficiency of your cabinet with admin skills is higher. I think it's fantastic. I do think it makes a higher military skill, and yeah, higher military skill on your rulers way more important than admin or diplo, because military is how you do stability. It's how you do coring. So I think maybe a couple of those could be swapped around a little bit, but that's more talking in the cabinet area. But yeah, I think this is good. I will say for growth, children gain stats over time until they become an adult. I didn't find any of my homegrown characters to be on the level of any of the characters that I saw in the world, right? Even though as soon as they turned, I believe, 6 years old, you could then spend more court costs, and I think like 250 ducats to give them a improved education to increase their stats. I just never found that the characters that I grew from childhood to adulthood were ever as good, so I think growth maybe needs a little bit of a look. But the way that characters are used in the cabinet, in generals in armies and admirals in navies, I do think they are really, really good. Can I think of improvements? Yes, I would like the cardinals for Catholicism to be characters. I don't like that they're buildings. I think the ecumenical patriarch of Constantinople, and probably of Georgia as well, in Bulgaria, I think these should also be characters. The way that I would probably fix that is to make the cardinals building-based countries. Would that increase lag? Maybe. I don't know. But that's kind of where I'm at. I think there absolutely are things that could be improved by them, but the fact of their existence, I am still entirely in favor of, and I think that it definitely works. So I'm going to put them at A tier, and that is, unironically, the most controversial one that we have so far. But I think we're going to end this video here. We have still got probably 2 more videos of this tier list, depending on how fast I get through these. I guess I'm just talking a lot about my opinions, and we'll go from there. But so far, this is what we have. 1 in S tier, 1 in C tier, and then everything kind of spread out in between. And yeah, I'm comfortable with what we've currently got, and I'm looking forward to getting the rest of these implemented into our list. So stay tuned for that. This is going to be part 1 of my EU5 tier list. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like. Let me know if you have disagreed with any of my tiers so far. Where would you put this? I'm also going to leave a link to this forum thread, so you can go and click this here and make your own tier list. And hop on my Discord, there's a link in the description, and share your tier lists with me, and yeah, we'll see where we go from there. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.